The first thing one must learn about the Eldari is that they are a race of fragments, broken, scattered across the galaxy. In culture, geography, and technology, the disparate elements of the Eldari race vary wildly, even within a single sub-race. There is great diversity of tradition and attitude, from Inquisitor Bronislav Chevak, the teachings of the unholy. The surviving Eldari people are now divided into several different factions or subcultures, sometimes called kindreds, each defined by the way in which they chose to save themselves from the great curse wrought upon them after their fall. No matter where they go in the universe, every one of them is at risk of having their soul consumed by she who thirsts upon death. It is this central fact of their existence that defines how each faction has chosen to carve out new lives for themselves. First up we have the Asuryani, or Craftworld Eldari. They are those of their race who repented of the ways of the pleasure cults only a short time before the fall, and sought to leave the heart of the decadent Eldari Empire behind before disaster could ensue. As the heart of their civilization was torn out by this catastrophe of their own making, many of the survivors, now calling themselves Eldar to outsiders, and the Asuryani among themselves, fled the core worlds of their empire upon gigantic, continent-sized starships once used for commerce and trade that they named Craftworlds. The remnants of the ancient Eldari culture that survived the cataclysm among the Asuryani preserved much of their species' history in the form of traditional stories, songs, and dance. Written records, monuments, and visual records were almost completely destroyed, except for a few instances where they were taken aboard voidcraft fleeing from the doomed worlds. Now, the Asuryani cling to survival by a thread, fighting the horrors of the galaxy with ritualized discipline and consummate skill. The Asuryani rely on mystical technologies like psycho-crystalline spirit stones and the psychoactive wraithbone infinity circuits that comprise the skeletons of their craft worlds to store their souls after death and prevent their consumption by Slaanesh. It is the use of these technologies and their pursuit of a rigid system of behavioral modification to keep their darker impulses in check that shape the Asuryani lifestyle and define their culture as distinct from that of the other Eldari subcultures. For this reason, the Asuryani are defined as a culture by their pursuit of the Asuryani path. This philosophy teaches them how to balance their potent minds and pursue constructive goals rather than falling to the amoral pursuit of pleasure and selfishness that ultimately destroy their ancient empire and still defines their dark kin, the Drukhari. The Eldari are a naturally psychic species, and all Asuryani possess the potential to become powerful psykers if they choose to pursue the path of the seer. They can use these innate abilities to shape matter, which lies at the foundation of their extraordinary command of technology. The Asuryani are further divided up into separate cultures based on their craft world of origin. There are dozens of these worlds scattered across the galaxy, but 5 of these have proven the most politically and militarily influential on their Asuryani kindred. First, we have the Alaitoc. Far out on the frontiers of the galaxy, on the edge of explored space, lies the Alaitoc craft world. The Alaitoc Asuryani are zealous in their vigilance against the touch of Slaanesh, even more so than the other Asuryani. Alaitoc is an unusually strict craft world in making sure its citizens follow the Asuryani path and other craft world traditions. In response, many of the more freedom-loving individuals from this world choose instead the path of the outcast, becoming rangers or even Eldari corsairs who roam the galaxy and make their living raiding primarily Imperial commerce. While all craft worlds make use of the rangers, who are the most highly accurate snipers amongst the Eldari, none field or produce more than Alaitoc. Though Alaitoc rangers do not reside upon the craft world and prefer to travel the galaxy, these rangers retain their loyalty to Alaitoc and will return to their home craft world on occasion to visit family and friends. Aside from deploying large numbers of standard rangers, Alaitoc is also the only craft world to field the highly skilled rangers known as Pathfinders. These snipers, without compare, can cause havoc amongst even the most powerful and numerous of enemy forces. In times of extreme need, such as when the Imperium of Man's forces invaded Alaitoc, the craft world sometimes recalls its rangers to contribute to its defense forces. Whereas their kin have forgotten their people's duty to watch for the return of their ancient enemies, the Necrons, the Asuryani of Alaitoc have not. When the Necrons first began to awaken in the late 41st millennium, Alaitoc was quick to respond, sabotaging the systems of awakening tomb worlds and lending aid to exodites threatened by their re-emerging enemies. Alaitoc uses a sword rune which represents the Sword of Vol, the final divine weapon forged in Eldari myth for the Smith God's desperate battle against the war god Kayla Mencha Kane. It represents the defiance and determination of the craft world's people. Alaitoc and its forces are associated with the colors blue and yellow. The craft world is known to be located in the Ultima Segmentum that was the heart of the ancient Eldari Empire. Next, we have Biel-Tan, the most martial of the craft worlds. The people of Biel-Tan constantly strive to return the ancient Eldari Empire to its former glory. For the Asuryani of Biel-Tan, the path of the warrior, the life stage that encompasses the aspect warriors, is always considered the first step upon the Asuryani path. Upon reaching physical maturity, a Biel-Tan Asuryani becomes an aspect warrior, and only once they have fulfilled this role can they continue alongside the normal Asuryani path. They have a strong honor code and believe that the best way to die is in battle fighting the enemies of Biel-Tan and the Eldari. Consumed with bitterness, they wage an endless campaign of xenocide against those foolish enough to cross their path. Biel-Tan's armies contain the highest percentages of elite troops of all the craft worlds, and few of the staple citizen militia called guardians that most craft worlds call upon in times of war. Their highly trained forces are known as the Sword Wind, and they often come to the aid of exodite worlds beset by orcs, Drukhari, or other Xenos dangers. As the Asuryani of Biel-Tan see it, when the time comes for the Eldari to reclaim what is rightfully theirs, the Paradise Maiden Worlds and the planet of the Exodites will be the first staging points for their conquest. The World Rune of Biel-Tan is also the Eldari Rune of Rebirth, and its name actually means the rebirth of ancient days. Next, we have Iyanden. The Iyanden Craftworld was once one of the largest and most prosperous of all remaining Asuryani craftworlds. The Iyanden barely survived an attack by the Tyranid Hive fleet Kraken, which nearly destroyed the craftworld and killed 4/5 of its population. On the verge of total annihilation, Iyanden was saved from complete destruction by the exiled Eldari Corsair Prince Iriel, who had formerly been the High Admiral of the Iyanden fleet. Iriel and his outcast Eldari pirate raiders, even though previously vowing never to return, could not bear to have their home craftworld destroyed and launched an attack on the Tyranid fleet. The subsequent battles destroyed much of the craftworld's infrastructure. Today, many of its sections are still in ruins, and the population is spread thinly across its ruined sections. This forces Iyanden to often call upon the spirits of its fallen in its infinity circuit, raising more than the typical numbers of Wraith Guard and Wraith Lords to aid their dwindling warriors in battle. The world rune of the Iyanden craftworld means light in the darkness, a reference to the ever-burning shrine that honors Asuryani and the flame of hope for the Asuryani. Next, the Saim-Han. The Asuryani craftworld of Saim-Han was one of the first craftworlds to abandon the Crone Worlds as the fall of the Eldari approached, heeding their Far-Seer's warnings. As such, they have spent far more time isolated from the rest of the Asuryani than the other major craftworlds, although the Saim-Han do maintain contact with and have a very similar culture to the Exodite worlds. They are fierce warriors who place upon martial honor a higher value than their sophisticated kin. This, coupled with their pride, has sadly led them into conflict with each other and different craftworlds. While this generally takes the form of an organized duel between representatives of each craftworld, in which first blood is usually sufficient to end the matter, the high number of deaths from these conflicts has lent to the barbaric reputation of this craftworld among other Asuryani. The Asuryani of Saim-Han bear the Eldari world rune that represents the serpent as their heraldry, sporting it on the cowlings of their jet bikes, gav tanks, and aircraft. The words Saim-Han mean quest for enlightenment, for the Eldari word for snake and secret knowledge is identical, Saim. In Eldari myth, the serpent is the only creature believed to exist in both the material and the psychic universes at the same time. Hence, the serpent is said to know all secrets, past and present. And the last of the major craftworlds, Ulthwé. One of the largest craftworlds, Ulthwé was caught in the pull of the Eye of Terror after it erupted into being, and now orbits it. As such, it faces a constant danger of attack by chaos marauders and demons, and has served as a bastion against the forces of the Dark Gods for thousands of Terran years. The constant war and risk of attack has hardened the craftworld citizens, and it maintains a standing militia force known as the Black Guardians, who are highly skilled and better trained than the Guardians of most other craftworlds. Its proximity to the Eye has also given Ulthwé an unusually large number of potent psykers, even for the Eldari. One of the most famous and integral aspects of the Ulthwé craft world is that of its seer council, formerly led by the now exiled Eldar Ulthwé, who was banished due to his support for the Eldari. The council both overtly and secretly interferes with other races, particularly humanity, in an attempt to steer fate in the Eldari's favor. This practice has no doubt allowed them to survive so long in such a perilous position. This craftworld's rune, the Eye of Isha, symbolizes the sorrow of Isha, the goddess of the harvest and fertility from whom the Eldari believe they descend. Isha, it is said, wept bitterly when Asuryani, the king of the gods, ordered her separation from her mortal children. Vol forged her tears into the first glittering spirit stones so that her grief might not be in vain and mortals might still be able to commune in some form with the realm of the gods. Today, the warriors of Ulthwé bear this symbol as their sigil, a poignant reminder of the divinity they lost long ago.